So, like Dakari told you, my name is Mike Spikes. I work at Stony Brook University, about an hour away from New York City on Long Island in the state of New York. What news literacy is, we teach a course for news consumers. Even though, as you see up here on the screen, you see that we're part of the Stony Brook University School of Journalism, which is one of the only schools of journalism within the State University of New York system. But the course that we teach, again, is for the news consumer, not as much a journalist, although we do require all of our journalism majors to take news literacy. It's a course that it's a course where it's one of the first core courses in our journalism curriculum, but it's also taught as a general ed requirement at Stony Brook. This class started in 2006. As of fall of 2014, we will have achieved teaching this course to 10,000 undergrads at Stony Brook. We've also exported this course to more than 50 universities and colleges around the United States. And we also train teachers, high school teachers around the country, to also teach this course as part of other courses that they teach in high schools, middle schools. We've even done it in some elementary schools. So, what is news literacy? What news literacy is a course that tries to teach to news consumers how do you make sure that you're getting reliable, verified information from news sources. Our course, we teach it in the course of 14 lessons, because as you know now, the news consumer is not just a person that just watches the news. We don't just sit and watch. We are also news producers, whether we like it or not. How might that be? How might you say that we're not just news consumers, we're also news producers?
I mean, maybe if there's like some event, it's something that goes on, everybody's going to be tweeting about it, posting about it, and then a lot of times like these organizations may look at that to kind of see what's going on.
Right. We may be tweeting about a certain situation, especially if you are a person that's there on the site of a big event or something that has happened, you tweet it. What else might happen?
A lot of times the news reports on what the people want to hear. So we kind of create that voice of what we want to be told, in a sense. That
is true. We teach, one of our lessons deals with the question of what is news and who decides what is news. Who decides that Justin Bieber being arrested for the, umpteenth time is a piece of news we need to know, okay? And we do deal with that, and part of that does have to do with the audience, because if the audience doesn't care, they're not going to watch. So why should we even put it on the air, right? Why should we write about it? The people who spend the money to get it put in the newspaper or get it put on TV or on the internet, why should they care about spending the money to do so? Okay, that is a factor. Any other ways that might be indicative and show the way that we are not only consumers, but we are also producers?
Maybe just like demonstrations and things like the Occupy movement, how we kind of created the news in that by making such a big deal, by demonstrating and by drawing attention to things.
That is definitely another way. That is definitely another way. The way that we really focus on is social media. We tweet, we Facebook, we put up videos on YouTube. So the core of news literacy, what we say to our students is news literacy should allow you as a news consumer to make sure that you get information that is reliable and verified, so you can either, 1, make a decision, 2, take an action, or 3, responsibly share what you know, okay? Because there's been lots of times that we've seen that we've gotten pieces of information, sometimes from the news, sometimes from friends, sometimes from family, that hasn't been verified, that hasn't been checked. And what do? We hear a big piece of news, we stick it up on Facebook. We send it out as a tweet sometimes. And there's dangers involved in that. Basically, what I wanted to go over with you today was, since you are now crossing the line, although you do this at your schools as writing for your newspapers, you work for if your school has a television program, you work for them. So you cross the line from being a consumer to being a producer with a large audience. Even though, how many of you have a Facebook page? It's like these days, who doesn't? How many of you have a Twitter account? Okay, boom, you've got an audience. Who's your audience on Twitter? Your followers. Who's your audience on Facebook? Your friends. Now, granted, if you use Facebook in certain ways, you can tailor what kind of information you want to give to certain audiences, right? Because you can change the privacy settings and all that kind of stuff. So again, in those kind of ways that you've probably heard, like you got to think about what information you put out on the internet and to what audiences you're speaking to. You also need to think about that as a journalist, as you've heard it many times. Being a journalist is a huge responsibility because you're speaking to a large audience of people who are betting on the fact that the information that you are giving them has been verified and it is true. And if it's not, what could be one of the consequences of that? Could be a lawsuit. How about a more immediate consequence? You can lose your job. Okay? Yeah, it could be that. Okay, you could be blacklisted, your contacts don't want to talk to you. And really what happens is you lose not only your own credibility, but you lose credibility for the organization it is that you report for. Okay? So what we're going to talk about and what my presentation mostly is on is what is news? Okay, so starting off, I want to ask, where do you get your news? Where do you get news?
Well, me personally, I get my like things like magazines and kind of like online sites like MSN or Yahoo or something like that.
Okay. So you mentioned MSN, you said Yahoo News, okay?
CNN Twitter page.
CNN Twitter page.
Yeah, kind of just like liking and following like news organizations like the Washington Post or like MSNBC on like Twitter and stuff.
And they put up, they'll put up stories on Facebook and it pops up in your feed, yeah.
On TV and on websites like CNN, the website, maybe the Washington Post sometimes.
Okay.
Mostly for me, ESPN and Twitter.
ESPN, because I know you're a big sports guy. Okay. Any other places we get news? Newspaper, radio. How about this? How many times is your phone, my phone has gone off a bunch of times a day telling me, oh, look at what's going on today.
Well, I cut off the notifications.
You cut it all off? Okay. Now, in all of the answers that you gave me, there is a common thread throughout all of them, which is good, but it was something I was kind of expecting to get from this audience. What do you think that might be? Think about the places that we heard that we get our news.
It's all digital.
It is all digital. What else?
I guess a lot of it is kind of like real time, so it may not have been completely like everybody's trying to get out as quickly as they can, and so they may not like take all the effort to make sure every single thing is completely right.
That's true. That's true. Because yes, news is continually moving. It's continually changing. There's a term that we use within our course. We call it that the truth is provisional, meaning that the truth changes over time because the number one rule also from the Society of Professional Journalists is that journalists' job is to seek the truth and report it. And also, as a kind of like asterisk to that, as fast as possible, right? Because you don't want to be the last person to know something, okay? But getting back to that idea of that there is a common thread throughout all of the things that you told me. You said, some people said, I follow the feeds from the Washington Post, I look at the CNN Twitter page, I look at Yahoo News, I look at MSNBC, I look at CNBC. What's a common thread throughout all of those?
Wait, never mind. Yeah, I'll take a stab at it.
All right.
It's like we get it from each other.
Well, that's one, but that's not the common thread. Okay, I'm gonna give one more chance. CNN, MSNBC. Right. What'd you just say?
Oh, they're the biggest news media.
Yeah, they're big media news outlets. Okay, they are the first places that we think of when we think of news, right? You think of NBC News, CBS News, ABC News. You think of those places, right? But we get news from all other kinds of places. You just brought up the fact that we get news from each other, right? You might hear a story from me. I don't work for ABC, NBC, CNN. I don't work for none of them people, right? But you might think of me as a credible news source. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, you hope so, right? So, like for instance, one of the other projects that we're working on right now is a game where we try to show students that you get news in drips and drabs and pieces and parts from all over the place, right? And how important, and what we try to teach is that it's very important for you to stop first when you get a big piece of news and say, what do I know? What don't I know? And how do I know what I know? And how do I not know what I don't know? Okay? So I know, yeah, it sounds always confusing. It always sounds witty to me when I say it. So, but you have to think about that. So the way that we define news in our course is this way. We say that news is timely information of public interest that is shared, because obviously we want to get it out to people, and is subject to a journalistic process of verification, and for which an independent individual or organization is directly accountable. So just like Dakari told you, yes, I used to be a high school teacher. I was a high school teacher for 7 years. And the thing I'm going to ask you is, what do you notice about the words verification, independent, and accountable? They're bold and they're colorful. So that might tell you that they're important, right? So one of the ways that we teach a lot of our concepts in our classes is that we use acronyms. So I'm going to teach you the first acronym that we use to define news, and that is VIA. Verified, independent, accountable. What we're going to do is we're going to go over what do each of those things mean, okay? And what are the examples of those, and how does it become very important for you as not only a news consumer, but also a news producer to know this acronym and to think about it every time you encounter a piece of news, whether it be from a reputable organization or an individual. Okay, and I see everybody vigorously taking down notes. All right, so let's go to the first one, which is verification. So I put up two definitions of verification. The first one I've got here is that it is a process that justifies a claim of truth through a collection of evidence. So that's where you hear the rumor and you go out and you try to verify that piece of information. Okay? The second one is that it's the process that establishes or confirms the accuracy of a piece of information. How accurate is the piece of information you got? Were parts of it true? Were parts of it not true? Were parts of it right, but other parts of it were kind of fuzzy? Which parts were fuzzy? What else did I need to find out? Okay? And as they vigorously take it all down, yeah. Okay? So verification is check it out. One great line that we always like to use, if your mother tells you that she loves you, check it out.
Remember that one.
Remember that.
It will come up again.
Right? Okay? It always says to you that every time you get a piece of information, it's not trying to say to you that you should be cynical to the point to where you say, well, I don't believe nothing I hear. Okay? It is really what you want to do, just like Joe Johns talked about this morning. He said you should read multiple news sources. Don't only read the Washington Post. Don't only read the New York Times. Don't only read CNN's page. Don't only watch NBC. Don't only watch one channel. Because what that tends to do is in certain cases, and we teach a class on this, and I'm going to try not to get too far into this, but we teach a course on fairness, bias, and balance in reporting, okay? Two main sort of cable stations, one being MSNBC, one being Fox News, are known for one thing each. What is that? What is Fox News known probably for the most? Well, they call themselves fair and balanced. But
Well, what I hear from adults, not saying that it's a very racist station.
well, some might say that. Some may say it kind of leans to the right, right? And then people also say they look at MSNBC and they say, well, it leans to the left, right? So in certain cases, some people like to only watch Fox News. And they say, well, it leans to the right. Because for people who watch it, and this is not just a general statement about everybody that watches Fox News, but the belief sometimes becomes that people like to watch Fox News, although a report may be slanted, and they don't take the time to see whether or not the information that they're getting has been verified, that it's been done by an independent source, and so on, is that it confirms their own beliefs. In MSNBC sometimes can be thought of as doing that too, those who lean to the left. Because who doesn't want to hear, yes, you are right. Your opinion is right. You don't think Obama should be in office? Yes, you're right. Right? Okay? Who doesn't want to hear that? Okay? One of the things that the dean of our school, he did this presentation a couple months ago, and I thought it was great. He said, you have to have the courage to listen to opinions that don't fall within what you believe. And it does take courage to do that. So if you are a person that likes to watch Fox News, you need to flip over to MSNBC every once in a while, and so on, okay? So, and that's a whole nother lesson, but I did want to bring that up really, really quick. So, and getting back to verification, what are some of the ways that we verify information? Some examples of this, and some very good examples of this, come from, just like we talked about, those reputable news organizations. So here's a story that was from the New York Times a few years ago. They did a whole investigation on water quality standards within the United States. And as it says millions in the U.S. drink dirty water. Records show more than 20% of the nation's water treatment systems have violated key provisions of the Safe Drinking Water Act. And if you take a look on the bottom portion here, how does this tell you that the information that the New York Times is telling you in that headline, that it's been verified? What tells you that down here on the bottom? Anybody, go ahead. What? Go ahead, say it.
I was gonna say, just the Safe Drinking Water Act. I guess if you would for someone to look that over and then actually see what's going on, then they would realize that it might be accurate.
Right. Now that's the claim that they made, which is a good observation. And as you move through it more towards the bottom, how did they verify that claim?
They didn't really get into that source.
Well, right, they say millions of records from water systems and regulators. You are right by saying they haven't told you here in this example what are the specific reports. But they do tell you that we have combed over all of these reports in order to make this claim. And that is a way that we can, as news consumers, the producer of this news has told us, this is how I verify this claim. And that is one of the key lessons that we teach. There are a lot of times where you will come across information or you will come across claims that have not been verified. Okay? People will say, well, such and such is this way because I said so. The question is, well, who are you? Right? Who made you the judge and jury? Okay? So be careful when you see claims without verification. Okay? All right, our second letter is I for independence. And what does independence mean for us? Independence is the freedom from the control, influence, or support of interested parties. coupled with a conscious effort to set aside any pre-existing beliefs in a system of checks and balances. Now, the way that we define independence is twofold. One is through the reporter. The reporter has to show that they have independence and have no connection to the story that they're reporting on. Okay? Some of the ways that they do this is they say, well, there may be a conflict of interest here, and they make that known up front. Okay? The reporter also needs to make sure that they do not exert any undue influence on the reporter and the reporting that they are doing. Okay? Then, when you start to think about the sources that you talk to for your stories, now you might think, well, a source needs to be knowledgeable about the subject. So how independent could they be? Because if somebody is totally independent, they probably don't know much about the subject in certain cases. But just like at the end of this definition says, they set aside any types of pre-existing beliefs. Okay? That's where we sort of get into the idea of balance and fairness in a story. We had a student last year do a story on immigration reform. She went out and interviewed a number of students who were going to a rally. Okay? Now, do you think that the students that she talked to, that most of them would be for reform or against reform? They would be for reform, okay? So you might say, well, she's interviewing a bunch of self-interested sources. These are people that want to see this pass or want to see this happen, okay? But what is the next step that she needs to do? She needs to talk to people on the other side. Right, so you need to exert a bit of balance here, okay? And again, that balance and independence, they go hand in hand. So, one example of independence that we use is this, where in certain cases, people can get tricked. Now, I know this isn't journalism, but we like to use this again for the general news consumer. All of these 3 magazines that are up here on the screen have one thing in common. What is that? Well, yeah, they're all about food.
What else?
You see that they are, well, yeah, it's kind of hard to see on the middle one, but. Right, they all come from Kraft. You see that little Kraft symbol up there. Why might they do that? What might be unique about the ingredients that are given to you for the recipes in this book? Huh? Well, yeah, it could be cheese, but they would be all Kraft products, okay? So in this case, again, I know this is like a consumer example, but it's one of those that kind of says these are like those little magazines that'll be up there by the checkout stand. And you say, oh, you know what, that look good. I might want to try this for dinner tonight. But all the recipes in there are going to be for Kraft products, okay? So something to be aware of. So labeling is very important to be aware of. Okay, and our last one, accountability. That is being responsible and answerable for your work. News outlets do this frequently. If you watch CNN, there's something that every journalist does, well, at least I've seen, when they're doing a package. For those, who's doing TV here? Okay, you guys are doing TV. You know what a package is, right? Package is it's the pre-produced story, all right? What usually always comes at the end of a package? It's the last thing. I did hear sound on tape. I did hear a couple of different things.
They'll say like Armanazad News 4 or something.
Exactly. They say their name and they say the organization that they're reporting for. Why?
Because you have to be, we know who you should be. Because like if something happens, they know who you are, so they are responsible and answer it.
Right. It's one of the ways that reporter has shown that they are putting their name on this report and there's an organization that stands behind the work that they've done. Okay? So if you hear somebody say, if you see a package from Mr. Johns and you hear him at the end say, Joe John, CNN, And he'll sometimes will say the location that he's at, Washington, D.C. or whatever. It's one of the ways that that reporter shows that he is accountable for all of the information that is in that report. Okay? Because CNN, ABC, NBC, the New York Times, that carries a lot of weight. And again, if you remember what I talked about at the beginning, you not only are responsible for your own credibility, you are also responsible for the credibility of the organization that you report for. Okay? So putting that at the end of that is very important. So, some of the other ways that news organizations can show that they have been accountable. One of the ways that they do so, and we have been pretty, I don't want to say too closely tied, but we've done a lot of work with the New York Times over the past couple of months. And this person, Margaret Sullivan, is the public editor of the New York Times. Who knows what a public editor is or what they do? Well, she doesn't do that. That's more of kind of like the general editor or the editor of a certain section of the paper.
It's kind of like the citizen's advocate, kind of, on the newspaper.
Exactly. They're kind of like the advocate. They're the person who goes through the letters to the editor, right? Sometimes you see that there are letters from the editor printed. Some of you that are on your own newspaper staffs at your high schools, do you ever publish letters to the editor? No. Nobody sends stuff, okay? Nobody really pays that much attention anymore.
Too many characters.
Yeah, too many, yeah. But exactly, the public editor takes feedback from the general public or the readers and responds to controversies that may have come up in the paper. I think that person is more of an, they give advice. I think that person more or less gives advice. A better example would be, say we went to interview Ms. Sullivan, and one of the things that had recently come out was there was an image that was published on the Times front page. No, we didn't talk about that one, but this is a pretty good example. So there was an image, there was a guy who was shot in front of the Empire State Building. And there was an image that was put, it wasn't on the front page of the newspaper, but it was on the front page of the website. The guy was in front of the building. It was taken from above, and it was blood coming out of his head. And the controversy was, should they have put that on the front website, like on the front page, not of the newspaper again, but of the website? Because a lot of people said, that's too graphic, I don't want to see that, right? We used to do an activity during our first 2 weeks here where we asked that same question. Some images that may have been pretty controversial, that were, some people may have seen as being gruesome, should they have gone up? So the public editor takes the responses that they've gotten from the audience and will write a regular column that usually runs, I think she says on Sundays that it runs. And that column will try to really tell why we did what we did. Why did we make that decision? What were the decisions that were made? Because she's kind of like the liaison. This person is also sometimes known as an ombudsman. Okay? NPR has an ombudsman. Okay? That person, again, is a liaison between the audience and the news organization. So if you ever find that something comes up, like even though now it almost seems like Twitter almost plays that role. Another example was during the presidential election on NPR. I think he was the White House correspondent. He's not the correspondent anymore. Ari Shapiro. Any of you know of him? Shapiro, sorry. Excuse me. Shapiro. He now reports over in London, but he used to be the White House correspondent. So he went to a rally. He went to I think it was a rally for Mitt Romney, and he got a woman on tape saying, she was talking about Michelle Obama, and the quote was, "I don't like her. She's not fit to be a first lady. She doesn't look like a first lady." Cut. That was the end of the bite. There was nothing else from the woman. And what was interesting about that was he got a lot of comments from people because they said, what else did that lady have to say? The story wasn't about her, but the story quickly became about her, right? So he was able to, he responded to some people on Twitter back to them. But also the ombudsman is a person that can also field some of those requests and find out why exactly that bite was in that story. What was, again, why was that there? How did you use that? What was the thinking process behind that? Okay? So think about that. So that's where the website, news outlet can be held accountable for the work that they do. Not every paper has an ombudsman or a public editor, however. Okay? Look out for letters to the editor. One other one is through, why can't I think of the word? Not clarification, but if they make a mistake, corrections. Okay? The Washington Post, not too long ago, ran the top picture of this woman whose name is Barbara Johnson. Great that I can sort of read it. A 51-year-old DC artist was denied communion on February 25th at a Catholic church in Gaithersburg. However, that was not Barbara Johnson. Well, at least not the Barbara Johnson that they were talking about. The image below, which I covered up with the Washington Post thing. Let me take that away. Can I take it away? I guess not. I guess I put it on there. That woman, even though she looks very similar, she does look very similar, was the actual Barbara Johnson. So the joke was that I guess all Barbara Johnsons must look like this woman and they must all wear these same kind of glasses. Okay, but they printed a correction. They said we ran the wrong picture for this person. Okay, sometimes the Post, I don't know what page they actually put it on, because I know there's actually a page that they always put them on. And also, you'll probably notice that when you come across an article that has had a problem in it, they'll usually put the correction right on the bottom on the website because they can quickly change that. So that's another way that a news organization stays accountable for the work that they do.
Okay, now you sparked my interesting. I want to know why this person, I know that was a retraction or a correction, but why?
What?
Did it say? I want to know the reason why. I'm just sorry. I know it's off.
Oh, why was she denied communion?
Does it say?
Denied communion to a lesbian at her mother's funeral.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So again, that is somewhat of an assumption. I would probably have to get a little bit more from where I got it from, but it was an example that we used. All right, one last thing and then I'm done. So one of the things to think about is as you go from a news consumer to being a news producer, which some of you have been for a while, it is important to, one, just how we use VIA, verification, independence, accountability. You want to, one, just like I talked about before, you want to make sure as a reporter your job is to seek the truth and report it. So you gather, you assess, and you weigh evidence that you get. Two, place the facts into context. Okay? Some of you brought up a really good example of how I may not have given you context on some of these slides. I showed you a claim, and then I said, here's the verification. And some of you said, well, that verification still is kind of, yeah, it's still fuzzy. It may not have been in context. Okay? Third, be fair, and when appropriate, adjust your balance. We had, this was now a year ago, we had CNN's Christiane Amanpour come and speak to our students, and one of the things she talked about was when covering huge conflicts, like for instance, Ukraine wouldn't be a good example, but she reported, yeah, in Serbia, right. She was saying that while it was important as a journalist to exercise balance in her reporting, she needed to talk to, because there were so many atrocities going on, rapes, pillaging, murders, all of this. Yes, she went to talk to both sides, but you cannot equate the victim with the aggressor. So you must adjust the balance, okay? So you can't look at every story as black and white, okay? And lastly, just like I talked about, explain how you know, what you know, and what you don't know. And I should have also put there how it is that you don't know this. And a clear example of this is when you hear in a story, we tried to reach the party for comment, but did not get a response, okay? That is, just like I have here, that's showing that you are transparent in your reporting. You're showing your audience how you got the information you got. And why some things may not be there. This person was not available at the time of press, or so on, okay? Think about that, because these are issues that lots of times come up, okay, in the stories that we do. Now, granted, we know that, you're not working 8 to 5 every single day on all of the stories, okay? And we have the limits of time and trying to find out all the things we need to do and need to get for all the stories we want to do. But keep these things in mind as you go out and report. All right? Thank you so much.